Amen. That song is fantastic. Do you like that one, Be Thou My Vision? Anybody know when that was written? It was written in the 500s in Latin. That's crazy, huh? I kind of want to preach a whole sermon message on that song right now, but I'm not going to. All right, let's start out. We are in a comeback series right now. We're taking a fresh look at the life of Jesus. We're going to start out today with some trivia questions. We did trivia questions earlier. Time to do some more trivia questions. But here's the deal. The point of these questions is not the answer. It's how did you get to the answer? Okay? So how many of you enjoyed or liked it when you were back in high school? Some of you are still in high school. If you're in high school, give me a shout out. That was fantastic. All right. Some of you are still in high school. When you were in high school, how many of you appreciated multiple choice questions? Yeah, I mean, at least compared to, right, essay questions or short answer questions, or all those things, right? Because you know what the possible answers are. You might get it right just by guessing. It's possible, right? If you got an essay question, you are not going to get it right by guessing, are you? No, there's zero chance. All right, so let's come up with our first question here. Here we go. All right, and these are just totally random. Just questions I thought would be fun. Because the point is not what's the answer. The point is, how did we get to the answer? So don't just shout it out here, but let's see if you can think about it first. Which animal does not appear in the Chinese zodiac? Is it a dragon? That seems really unlikely, right? A rabbit, a dog, or a hummingbird? What do you think? What do you think? So it sounds like most people in the room are saying number 4, D. Okay, what's the right answer? Oh, it's a hummingbird. Give yourselves a round of applause. It's a hummingbird. Okay, pause there for a second, though. How did you come up with that answer? Now, probably for most of you, you looked at, okay, here's all the possible answers, right? And then you thought, well, which ones do I know are in the Chinese zodiac, so they can't be the right answer. They can't be the right answer to this, right? You thought, oh, I know a rabbit's in there. Dragon's got to be in there. Maybe I'm not sure dog or hummingbird. Hummingbird seems most likely to not be there. Boom, you got the right answer. Even though you probably didn't know, if somebody had just walked up to you and asked, is hummingbird in the Chinese zodiac? Would you have known the answer? Maybe. I would not have known the answer. I would have been like, you got me. All right, next question. The point here is, how are we arriving at the right answer? In The Wizard of Oz, how many of you watched The Wizard of Oz? Yeah? I love The Wizard of Oz. The Tin Man wanted to see the wizard about getting, what did he want? Did he want a brain, an oil can, a dog, or a heart? Any other? Everybody's saying D. Wow. Okay, what's the right answer? It's a heart. Wow, you guys are amazing. You guys are amazing. I thought, in my head, wasn't that the lion that wanted a heart? But he wanted courage. The lion wanted courage. Okay, so now, but I actually got the right answer to this. I got it by process of elimination, right? So I knew he didn't want a brain, because who's that? That's the scarecrow, right? His head's full of straw. That's obvious, right? And then an oil can. Well, he did need an oil can, but he didn't have to go see the wizard. Where'd he get the oil can? Dorothy used the oil can on him. And a dog, well, they already had a dog with them, right? Little dog named Toto. Yes, so he didn't need that. So it had to be a heart, even though I was like, in my head, I was like, no, that's not right. But it was. So we got to the right answer, even though we didn't know the answer. Whoa. At least I did. Maybe you knew the answer. Next one. Just a couple more here, just for fun. Which U.S. state is known as the Sunflower State? Is it Florida, California, Maine, or Kansas? Okay, put up, you can just do 1, 2, 3, or 4 with your hands. Put up what you think it is in numbers on your hands. We got a 1, we got 4s. Looks like we mostly got 4s, which is Kansas. What's the right answer? Kansas. All right. How'd you get there? How'd you get there? Well, do sunflowers even grow in Maine? I mean, maybe. They probably do, but it's kind of cold in Maine, so it's probably not the sunflower state. California and Florida are known for some other things, aren't they? Those can't be the sunflower states. Kansas is in the Midwest, right? But if someone walked up to you and said, which state is the sunflower state? Would you have been able to tell them? No way. Multiple choice is fantastic. It's fantastic. Powerful way to look at the world. Last one. One more just for fun. A Bible one. All right. In the Bible, how does Mary learn of her pregnancy with baby Jesus? Now, probably most of you know this, but maybe not. God tells her. The angel Gabriel tells her. She has a dream about it, or a doctor tells her. She went to see her doctor, and he let her know she was pregnant. So we got, what's your number? What's your number? We got some twos up there. We got a lot of twos. I think everybody's going to get this. But this one's great because sometimes in multiple choice questions, they give you a ridiculous answer, right? And you can just eliminate that one right off the bat. You don't really have doctors back then, kind of. But you didn't go to the doctor when you were pregnant to get checked up. So anyway, that one can be eliminated. What's the right answer? The angel Gabriel tells her. A little bit of a trick question because it's kind of God telling her at the same time, right? Through the angel Gabriel, but that's the best answer there. All right, so there's some trivia questions. What I want to get across from this, the title of the message today is The Logical Conclusion. And what I want us to think about, we're going to use at the end of the message today, we're going to go through some verses, and then at the end of the message, we're going to use a powerful way of thinking that we all use all the time to come to a conclusion that we couldn't have just jumped to without this way of thinking. We're going to use process of elimination. And we use this all the time, don't we? We use it in a multiple choice question, right? We also use it, don't we? We use it whenever there's a problem or often when there's something wrong in our lives, right? Like, let's say, this happens to me all the time. We are about to get ready. Kids are getting ready to go to school, and one of the kids reaches for their jacket, and the jacket's not there. Does that ever happen to anybody else in their household? They can't find the jacket. The kid's going to school. So the question is, where is the jacket? So what do? I mean, you might at first have no idea where the jacket is, right? But you actually create your own multiple choice question, don't you? You think back through, where are the places I have been? The jacket might be left at school. The jacket might be left in the car. The jacket might be in your room. The jacket might be left outside in the pouring rain because yesterday after school you were outside in the rain. You think through all the possible answers. You categorize them. You get an exhaustive list of possible places the jacket could be, and then you eliminate them, don't you? Go look in your room. Go look in the car. And if you can't find them anywhere, you conclude the jacket is at school. That's usually the answer in my house. The jacket was left at school, which is a great answer because then you don't have to keep searching. You can just send the kid to school. But you can't directly check to see if the jacket's at school because you're not at school. But you can find that answer and conclude confidently if you can eliminate all other possible locations for the jacket. Wow, you just learned some logic. Give yourselves a pat on the back. You just went to logic class. All right, this is going to be important. We're going to come back to this at the end. Today, so we're in this series of messages called Come Back. Come back together to church and to life. We're taking a fresh look at the life of Jesus. And we looked at a bunch of stuff that Jesus did. That's how we started off. Boom, big old miracles that he did. And we just kind of looked at those and went, wow, what does that mean? What were some of those big things that he did? Shout them out. Or put them up on the comments. Shout them out in your living room at home. Big things. Shout it out. No hands. Healed a blind man. He healed a man born blind. He healed lepers. Yep. Water to wine. Yep. Raised Lazarus from the dead after he was dead for 4 days. He walked on water. He fed 5,000. Actually, how many people was it really? Because they only counted the men. That was just their custom. They weren't against women. That was just their custom. There was like 10 to 15,000 people. One more. Yeah, he himself rose from the dead after 3 days. He himself. So he did all these miracles. So we started out this series of messages just looking at some of the big things he did. We also talked about the Samaritan woman. The woman at the well is a miracle, right? Even though there was no healing there, he transformed her life just by his presence and a few words. That's a miracle. That's a miracle that's true for many of us sitting in this room today. You've experienced that miracle at some point in your life. So we looked at those things that he'd done, right? And then we started to say, okay, what did people say about Jesus? What did his enemies say about him? We spent a whole week on that. Go back and check that out. And his enemies said lots of bad things about him, but what they never said was his miracles were fake. No one even tried to say that because it was impossible to say that when there were hundreds of people, thousands of people in some cases, standing in front of you who saw the miracle happen. His miracles were undeniable, even by his enemies. Then we looked at his friends and his disciples, people who were close to him and what they said about him. And now, last week, we started looking at what exactly did Jesus say about himself. And last week we saw that one of the big things that he said about himself is that he was the Son of God. He's the Christ, the Messiah, the one that everyone had been waiting for. And we talked about how that's a massive claim, right? And to make a massive claim, you got to provide overwhelming evidence, and he did. So the burden of proof, that's what we talked about last week. It was on Jesus until he fulfilled it. He provided overwhelming evidence that what he says is true. And so the burden now is not on him to prove that he's the Son of God. The burden is on human beings, us, to believe, because he has provided overwhelming evidence. So if you missed that, go back and watch that. That's an important message. Today, we're going to look at the second category of things that he said about himself. And this is where it gets, this blows my mind every time I look at it. When you first hear it, I don't know what you're going to think about this when you first hear it, but when you start to ponder this, you start to think, what does it really mean? What could be the motivation for him saying this? Who else said things like this? Because there is no one. This is a unique thing even to claim in the history of the world. Jesus said that he was equal to God. Now, you might think at first, okay, there's got to be other people in the world who have said that, who have made that claim that they are God. I mean, I knew a guy growing up. I went camping with him every year, and he would always say, yeah, I'm God. I'm God. But he didn't really mean it. It was like some sort of weird joke. He's kind of weird, and he would joke about being arrogant all the time. But so he would say the words, I'm God, but he didn't actually believe that he was the God who created the universe. He did not. There have been some other people in history. What about the Roman emperors? Didn't they claim to be gods? Yes, but they were not making the claim that Jesus is making here. We're going to see him make this claim in a minute. They were claiming to be gods the way that, like, the Greek gods are gods, right? Like Hercules and Zeus, right? Who are not really all that powerful when you compare them to the God of the Bible. Right? The Greek gods were always fighting with each other. There's some stuff they could do. There's some stuff they couldn't do. The God of the Bible, we're talking about a self-existent being who is outside of time, from whom everything else in existence comes. We're talking about the God who created the universe and who holds it in existence by his power. That's the God that Jesus, a human being, is claiming to be equal to. All right, so some of you might also have this reaction when you see me put that up on the board. Come on, Jesus didn't really claim that, did he? He didn't really say that he was God. That's got to be something that Christians just thought up later. That's got to be like a legend, right? So when I first became a Christian, I didn't actually think, that's what I thought. I thought there's no way Jesus really claimed to be God. Maybe the Son of God, maybe the Messiah, maybe somebody sent from God. I can remember having this discussion with some of my friends who were shocked that I had become a Christian. And I said, well, they said, do you believe Jesus is God? And at that time, I said, no. I said, no, I don't believe he's God. But then I kept reading the Bible. And that's what we're going to do next. Because the fact that he claimed to be God is undeniable in the records of his life and his words. He claimed to be equal to and identical to the God who created the universe. And that is a stunning thing to claim. So we're going to go through some verses. I'll show you that it's true. And we're going to talk about one in particular where he talks about how he's the Son of Man. We're going to draw some conclusions out of that. And then we'll come back and wrap it up with, okay, what do we do with this? What do we do with this, okay? All right, so first of all, we'll just march through sequentially through some places in the book of John, which is what we're looking at, where he makes this claim in different ways. This first verse that we're going to look at, these first couple of verses, are about the fact that Jesus continually referred to the God of the Bible as his Father. Now you might think, okay, well, doesn't that mean he's not God? And in some sense it does. Jesus also said that God was someone he could talk to. Said that God the Father was a different person than him, but he also said that he was identical with God the Father. What's going on here? I don't know. You're gonna have to wrestle with that on your own. We're just gonna talk about what he said. But in these verses right here, we're gonna see what the Jewish people understood it to mean when Jesus claimed that God was his Father. See, for us, if I say, I'm the son of whoever I'm the son of Mark, that's my dad's name. In our culture, I'm not making a claim to his authority, his power, to be able to do his job. But in their culture, that was implied. So check this out. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. So he's doing miracles, really good things, on the wrong day of the week. The day of the week they were supposed to be resting. And so they started to persecute him because he was healing people. Yeah, because that makes sense. In his defense, Jesus said to them, "My Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working." Next. Next slide. For this reason, they tried all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Notice what John is trying to help us understand what was understood by everybody around in those days. This is why people were so offended by him. If we call God our Father today, people think, oh, well, you're just a Christian, right? That's no big deal. But when Jesus called God his Father, when he said the God of the Old Testament was his Father, this implied that he showed up with the authority, the power, the knowledge, everything that his Father had was his. That's what it implied in their culture. You can see this in Jewish history. You can see this in Roman history. When Roman emperors took something over, often there's two famous Roman emperors, Titus and Vespasian. You guys heard of those guys? Titus and Vespasian were the Roman emperors who destroyed Jerusalem in the year 70 AD, which Jesus predicted later. When they destroy it, if you read the records of that destruction, it's always confused who the emperor is. They'll talk about Titus as the emperor. They'll talk about Vespasian as the emperor. These are father and son. They talk about them as one person often. In the culture of those days, especially for very important people and people making large claims, being the son of someone, claiming to be that someone is your father, implied that you had an equality of authority with that person. And Jesus did this all the time. Okay, next verse. Let's check out what's next here. Chapter 8. Here he's arguing with the Jews, with Jewish opponents, leaders, religious leaders. He's often doing that. And here's part of the argument in chapter 8. "Very truly, I tell you," Jesus answered, "before Abraham was born, I am." At this, they picked up stones to stone him. But Jesus hid himself, slipping away from the temple grounds. Just pause right there and leave that on the screen. Before Abraham was born, I am. The context of this, he'd been arguing with them, and they said, "We follow Moses and we follow Abraham." And he said, "You don't know anything about Abraham. I knew Abraham, and Abraham didn't act like you guys. Abraham actually trusted God." And they're like, "What are you talking about? You knew Abraham." Abraham had lived like thousands of years before Jesus. They're saying, "What are you talking about? You knew Abraham. You're not even 50 years old yet." And this is the context in which Jesus says this. He looks at them and he says, "Amen, amen." That's what this translates. "Very truly, I tell you." He says, "Amen, amen. Before Abraham was born, I am." Now, he is speaking to people, religious leaders who knew their Old Testament inside and out. So you guys tell me at home, shout it out if you know the answer. What is he referring to when he says, "I am"? He is referring to the name of God in the Old Testament. When Moses, if you know the story, when Moses first was called the burning bush, he saw this bush on fire that wouldn't burn up, and he was like, whoa, I'm going to go check that out. That's cool. And he walks over there, and he hears this booming voice, take your sandals off, you are on holy ground. And he's like, whoa, and he falls down. And this God speaks to him who he does not know. This God says, I'm the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And Moses says, but I need to know your name. You've never told us what's your name. And he says, my name is I am. I am the eternally existent one. The one who is before time and who always will be. The one who was and is to come. This is the word we translate either Jehovah or Yahweh. You'll see that in some of our songs. You're like, what's that weird word? It's the name of God in the Old Testament. What in the world is happening here? You can now see why they immediately picked up stones and tried to execute him. He is making a claim to be, by name, the God of the Old Testament. Just sit and look at that for a minute. And not only that, he's claiming that he existed before Abraham was born. Thousands of years ago, before Abraham was ever born, I am. Next slide. Chapter 9. This is going to be, we're going to have a few more verses after this, but in some ways this is going to be the piece that seals the deal. If you weren't convinced already, just from these first few verses, that Jesus claimed to be God himself, you will be after we go through this section. And it's kind of funny because in this section, he's going to refer to himself as something that often makes people go, well, he must not have actually claimed to be God. And the truth is the exact opposite. This is in the context, chapter 9. What big miracle happens in John chapter 9? You guys getting used to the book yet? Getting used to John? The healing of the man born blind. Yes, John chapter 9, the man born blind. It rhymes, almost, if you say it right. John chapter 9, the man born blind. Okay, so the man born blind, Jesus healed him, and then he walked away. Well, he told him to go do something, and he'd be healed. And then Jesus left, so it was kind of like this secret healing, remember? The guy goes and washes, now he's healed. He doesn't know who healed him. He doesn't know where Jesus is. He can't find him. And then he gets all kinds of flack from the religious leaders, right? They arrest him. They take him into court. They put him on trial. He ends up arguing with them. They kick him out. They excommunicate him from the church. They kick him out of society. And so he's sitting outside. His whole life has just been turned upside down. He can see now for the first time in his life, but everyone has rejected him. He's just trying to figure out, what do I do next? And Jesus shows up. And Jesus says to him, okay, here we go. Jesus heard that they had thrown him out of the synagogue. And when he found him, he said to the man born blind, do you believe in the Son of Man? Now, before we even go to on the next part, but before we read this, think about this. How would you respond to that? You would probably be like, what are you talking about, right? That's not how he responds, which tells us something. That this man, just like every Jewish person in that era, knew exactly what Son of Man meant. It was a technical term that they had grown up with all their lives. They knew exactly what this term meant. He doesn't say, what do you mean by Son of Man? Are you just in some weird way calling yourself a human? No. He says, who is he, sir? All my life, I've wanted to know, who is the Son of Man? If I could just find him, I would believe in him. I give my life to follow the Son of Man. Who is he? Next. Jesus said, you have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you. Now, that might not be super powerful for you yet. What in the world is this Son of Man? Is it just some weird way of Jesus saying that he's a human? No, it's not. This is a reference to Daniel chapter 7, which we looked at in our last series, right? In the summer, we looked at Daniel chapter 7. Let's go back to it and let's remember, because every Jewish person, everyone knew what this term meant, Son of Man. And this is a remarkable spot in the Old Testament. This is a vision that Daniel had, and Daniel did not understand the vision, and honestly, neither did anybody else, because it's super weird. Remember, we're talking about the Old Testament, where we have things like the Ten Commandments. How many gods are there in the Ten Commandments? One. There is only one God. The thing that the Jewish people were taught from the time they were born, what we refer to as the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. There is only one God. He alone is worthy of worship. Only one. Don't worship anything else. Don't worship anything created. Don't worship any human being. Don't worship any other God. They're not real. There's only one God. And here's the vision that Daniel received in chapter 7. And remember, Daniel is like the best track record, right? You can go back to that series. We looked at Daniel for a long time. Daniel predicted again and again things that happened exactly as they were predicted. Not Daniel, but God. God gave him these visions, and they came true exactly as they were predicted. So the Jewish people knew this vision was true, that it would come to pass, but they couldn't understand it. In my vision at night, Daniel says, I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. So there's one like a son of man. This is the way that Daniel refers to it. This is Daniel's attempt to say, he looks like a human, but I don't understand. He can't be a human. I'm just going to say he's the Son of Man. And he's coming on the clouds of heaven. And he approached the Ancient of Days. Who's the Ancient of Days? That's God the Father. That's the God of the Old Testament. So the Son of Man approaches the Ancient of Days. So in some way, they're different people somehow. And he was led into his presence. Next. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples of every language worshiped him. That is, they worshiped the Son of Man. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away. His dominion, this means he's sitting, the Ancient of Days is always pictured on a throne when people see him in a vision in the Old Testament. He's the King of the universe, and he's sitting on a throne. This Son of Man is given dominion. What does that mean? He's on the throne. This Son of Man is sitting on the throne that rules the universe, the throne that is reserved for the only God, Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament. And yet there's someone who looks like a human being sitting on that throne in Daniel's vision. This human being is given authority, glory, sovereign power. All of that belongs only to whom? God, the one true God who created the universe. And every nation, all peoples in the world worshiped him. So you have this bizarre vision in the middle of the Old Testament, right? You have the Old Testament saying there's only one God. There's only one God. Only worship the one true God. And then in the middle of it, you have this vision that someday in the future, all nations and people will worship someone who's sitting on that throne who looks like a human being. Someone who's the same as God, but also somehow different. The same and different. Equal to God, identical to God even, worthy of worship. And this is what Jesus is saying to the man born blind. And when he says this, the man knows exactly what he's talking about. The man knows that if he could just find this person, this one who will one day come and restore all things, then everything will be fine. He'll give his whole life to follow this person. And Jesus says, that's me. Jesus says, that is me. Now, this is particularly important because sometimes people say that the Gospel of John, in the book of John, Jesus claims to be God again and again. But not so much in the other records of his life, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, except for this one massive glaring fact, that in the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, what does Jesus refer to himself as over and over and over again. The Son of Man. In fact, in those other Gospels, he claims to be God even more than he does in John. He just does it in a way that the Jewish people would understand, and that is a little bit more difficult for us to understand today. This claim to be the Son of Man is a claim to the authority and worship that are only due to the one true God. Let's move on. We'll go through a few more here. John chapter 10, he says this, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Keep going. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. Pause there. What did Jesus just claim? He just claimed to own the sheep. Who are the sheep? Us. Who could possibly have a claim to own you? No one can have a claim to own another human being unless perhaps they were the person who created you. This is a claim to have created and therefore have ownership over all human beings. Go to the next set of verses here. We'll cruise through a few fairly quickly because I think you guys are probably getting the point here. John chapter 11, this is the resurrection of Lazarus from the dead. He's raising Lazarus from the dead, or he's about to. And we read this a few weeks ago when we were in that section, but I don't know if you allowed the meaning of it to strike your mind. Jesus said to her, to Mary, or to Martha, I can't remember, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. Now we talked about, go back, the one who believes in me will live even if they die. We talked about that a little bit, but we didn't talk too much about this. I am the resurrection and the life. Jesus here is claiming, as we saw last week a number of times, to be the source of life. There is only one source of life. The source of life is God himself. And Jesus is saying, that's me. I am that source. Next verse. If you're not convinced already, here's chapter 10, verse 30. I and the Father are one. I and the Father are one. We are the same. We are identical. Let's jump forward to the next verse. Well, we can see, I guess in this part, you can go back to that. In this part, I was going to show you just how his opponents responded to that. When he said, I and the Father are one. He says, I've shown you many good works from the Father. From which of these do you stone me? And then the next verse, they say, we're not stoning you for any good work, they replied, but for blasphemy, because you, a mere man, claim to be God. They understood. If you were unsure what he meant when he said, I and the Father are one, his opponents understood him to be saying, I am God. Chapter 12, and then we'll get to chapter 14 in a minute. It'll be our last two verses here. Jesus cried out, whoever believes in me does not believe in me only, but in the one who sent me. The one who looks at me is seeing the one who sent me. There is an identity here. He's saying, if you have seen me, you have seen God the Father. We are identical. Next, chapter 14, and this will be our last verse as we run through this book of John, all the verses where Jesus talks about himself as God. This is in the context of the Last Supper, and he's with his disciples, and they are very confused because he says, I'm leaving, but I'm still going to be with you. And they're like, what are you talking about? We'll get to that later. But he's talking to Thomas here. He says, if you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him, and you have seen him. Philip's very confused by this. He says, Lord, just show us the Father. Jesus has just said, you've seen the Father. Philip says, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Show us the Father, and then that'll be enough for us. Then we'll know how to follow God. Next, Jesus answered, "Don't you know me?" Listen to that interchange. "Show us the Father." Jesus says, "Don't you know me? Even after I've been among you such a long time, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father." All right. So now we've gone through all of our verses. Hopefully, you have seen at this point that it is very clear, there is no question at all. Jesus of Nazareth claimed to be, while he was walking around on earth, not just his followers later, not just other people, he himself said that he was the God of the Old Testament. He said that he was equal to God and identical with God. Now, what in the world do we do with that? I've already said to you that, I've already said to you that we can be sure that he said it, and we need to figure out how we're going to respond to it. Was it true? Was it not true? How can we know if this is true? Can it be tested? And what we're going to do is we're going to use our logic from before, okay? So just like when you are, you're at home, maybe your kids or whatever, you've lost your keys or your kids lost their jacket, you're going to figure out what are the possible explanations here. And then you're going to see which ones you can eliminate. Because this is a massive claim, and it matters a lot whether this is true or not. I've already said to you that no one else made this claim. No one else in all of history. Now, we could qualify that a little bit, and we will in a minute. But let's go through it. Let's try to list what the possible explanations of this. So we know that Jesus said this. What explains the fact that he said it? The problem to be explained is not, where did I place my keys? My keys are missing, or my jacket is missing. The problem to be explained is this: Jesus claimed to be God, the God who created the universe. How can that be explained? Here are some possible answers. Number one, he had a severe mental illness. I said there's no one who makes this claim, but there are some people who make this claim, right? There are some people who are not just mentally ill the way that we talk about that in normal life, but severely mentally ill, right? People who are normally institutionalized do sometimes make this claim and are genuine about it, right? They're not joking. But those people, it's very obvious that it's not true, isn't it? Very obvious, because they're not even up to the level of normal human competence. But how does Jesus compare with people who are severely mentally ill? Does he strike you as someone who's severely mentally ill, who should have been locked up? He's the greatest teacher who ever lived. He's full of love and compassion. He made a plan that changed the history of the world. Is that the result of people who are severely mentally ill? Is that normally what happens in those people's lives? So this is maybe a possible explanation, but I want to submit to you, we can exclude it. It's obvious that Jesus was not severely mentally ill. Next, what else could explain this? Maybe it could be explained this way, that he's trying to deceive everyone, and therefore he is, in fact, evil. So he's lying on purpose. Could that be the answer? I mean, we should list it as a possible answer at first, but if you think about this, what would his motive have been for lying about this? When he said this to people, what was the response? Did they, maybe, if somebody were going to deceive others, they might be trying to get power, right? Or money, or whatever else, fame. Did Jesus get power, money, and fame out of this? What did he get? People picking up rocks to try and kill him. That's what he got most often. And then, eventually, they did actually kill him. So what could possibly have been his motive for this? And in fact, this is why no one else, no other major historical figure, no other founder of any religion has ever made this claim. Why? Because nobody's going to believe it. Unless you can back this claim up with extreme evidence, no one is ever going to believe a claim like this. That you are the God who created the universe? Who would believe that? If someone that you knew right in front of you said that to you, there is zero chance you would believe it unless they could do something beyond your belief, beyond anything you had ever imagined, like raising Lazarus from the dead or coming back himself 3 days after he had died. That's the only way you would ever believe it. So I think we can exclude this. There's no motive for him to do this. And it's obvious that this was not his character or his style. And his miracles are evidence, overwhelming evidence, that what he said was true. So before we go to the last possible option, which should be the last one we really consider, because this is a huge claim, are there any other options you can think of? What else could explain the fact, besides it being true, which is what we're going to get to in a moment, what else could explain the fact that Jesus claimed to be the God of the Old Testament, the God who created the universe? What else could explain that fact? Could it be that he was maybe just joking? I think it's obvious that that's not the case, right? Ha ha ha. What else could explain it? The most common thing is for people to say, well, he didn't really say it. But we've spent the whole time this morning proving that that's not true. He did say it. He said it over and over and over again. So by process of elimination, by logic, there's only one conclusion left. And even though it is a world-changing, earth-shattering, totally turn your life upside down conclusion, it is the only logical conclusion. Next slide. It's actually true. Let's pray. We'll continue in worship. Our Father in heaven,